Hey everyone, I'm Patrick O'Brien, Ambassador to the Stars at Noise Engineering, and I'm here with Sweetwater today to talk about some really cool modules, including a brand new one that we're launching soon. And then I'll just break down the patch a little bit, show you some of the process. But I'm sure you just want to hear what these sound like. So why don't we just fire it up, see if you like this. Right, so that's my jam. And I was focusing a lot on the Leggio, which is our new stereo filter that you heard carrying a lot of the melodic sounds there. And I also incorporated the Desmodus Versio reverb, the Yester Versio 3-tap delay. You also heard the Basimulis Ateritas alter, which is our drum synthesizer, doing some attenuation with the Lapsus Os attenuverter. And the sequencing was done with Mimetic Digitalis, our 16-step sequencer. And we have the Quantus Trajecta, which is our envelope generator that's creating a lot of the different envelopes as well. And then all of that goes through our stereo mixer. It's a 4-channel stereo mixer, which then goes into Libre Leggio, which is a dynamics processing module to give it that punch and that aggression and compression and expansion that we need, and then it comes out. So there's also some other ones in there, including the Vert Iter Leggio, which is our stereo oscillator. The Temp Leggio has some other hi-hat fills just to give it some extra beef. And yeah, so I'm really happy to kind of go through all of this with you today. And let's first start with the Basimulis Ateritas alter. So the Basimulis, our company about 10 years ago, before we were a company, Stephen McCall had created a synthesizer. It's kind of a module as a hobby. And a coworker of his said, why don't you try this? Because he was actually in the gaming industry and wanted to do something a little more creative with his life. So on a piece of wood, he made these knobs and wires and just created a noise generator just straight off the piece of wood and was really excited about it. So we come out with the first oscillator, which was the ataraxic translatron. And then from there, he built the Basimulis Ateritas, which was a huge hit. And they made tons of them. And at that moment, noise engineering knew that this is where we wanted to go, and this is how we wanted to create modules and create the Eurorack format hardware. And so Stephen quit his gaming industry. His wife, Chris, she was a biological professor and studied for 16 years. She quit her job too. They bought a house and invested everything in the sense. And so now, 10 years later, we have about 70 different products of hardware that we are putting out. And we also have platforms. So you may have heard of Versio as a reverb, Versio as a distortion, Versio is an envelope, Versio is just a granular processor. And then we have Legio, and Legio is dynamics. Legio is also a stereo oscillator, and Legio is also the filter that we put out. So it's really nice that you can take the Legio and the Versio modules, and you can flip them on the back, put in a USB, download any other Versio or Legio, depending upon which one you have, and now you have several different firmwares and several different modules just with the one module, just by swapping out the firmware. And then we also produce these overlays that you can put on those as well. So if you like a certain one and you don't like the labels, because the label is a panel itself, you can just buy these overlays here, and now you can put them over your module, and then they magically become the module that you just swapped all the firmware out to. So I think what we'll do, since we talked a lot about the firmware, is to start with the stereo multi-mode filter Raucha Legio. So what's really nice about the Raucha Legio is that it has a bypassable switch at the top, so you can turn it off and on by pressing the button, the encoder I should say, at the top, or you can use an input to create the bypass through the gate. So let me play a little bit about Raucha just by itself. There's a high pass, band pass, and low pass, and then it also has some wavefolding that we'll get into. So I'm just going to spend a few minutes here on this. So it's the high pass, and then we'll do band pass. Then we'll do low pass. And then with all filters, they can get really squelchy and very acid, so why not go there? And now we'll add wavefolding, which is a signature thing that we as a company like to put into modules just to make it very simple and easy. One thing we really like is the playability of our modules. So just by turning a knob, you may instantly fall in love with the sound, and just the different ways of just pulling that creativity out of your mind. And so here's the wavefolding, which just makes this module so much more fun. Then, if you press the encoder, you can bypass that to create these kind of rhythmic patterns within the frequency, which I'll show you. Okay, enough of that. All right, so that's the Raucha Legio multi-mode filter. It was going through the Desmodus Versio, which is our stereo reverb built on the Versio platform. This was our first module that we come out with with the 10 HP format that was swappable with other firmwares. And this one is one of our favorites, and so many people enjoy this. And because it was such a success as our first Versio module, we've released 8 other Versio firmwares. A couple of them I have here. You see Yester, Lacrima, but also I have Lacrima as a overlay. So I have just like a base Versio underneath it. So that's how it just really kind of blends in when you just put the overlays on top of that. So let's hear a little bit of the Desmodus Versio. And again, the Raucho Legio is going just through the filter. So what I'll do is I'll start the reverb. I'll add the regen, which just adds the feedback layer. And then I'm going to adjust some of the tone. You can also adjust the space. You can add some whirling effects. There's some shimmering, distortion. And all of these controls have their own inputs as well. So if I wanted to take something from a sequencer and pop it in, it can also do that, so you're not just sitting here and just turning knobs constantly when you can have a CV control do a lot of that work for you. So we'll start with the dry signal, and I'll go into the reverb. So that's a little bit of the Desmodus Versio reverb module. The other module I like to talk about is the Basimilus Ateritas Alter. So when Stephen first made the Basimilus Ateritas, that was such a big hit, and we said, yes, this is the time. We're going to make a company. We revised that module and made a better one with more functionality. And this is clearly the success story that we have with our company. I'm just going to play a little bit of what you can do. So this is a drum synthesizer, has 3 different synthesizer sounds. You can go octave jumping as well. You can hit it by just pressing the button, or you can send a trigger to the trigger input. And over here I have a module called the Benseek, which is actually creating the drum pattern. So right now I just have it on beats 1 and 4, but I'll also play with those as well and just do some really interesting sounds within just the module itself. You can also make it do like nice tom effects, so it's not always a kick drum. Some people really like making this as a melodic voice, so it's not always a drum. So I'll show a little bit of that, and that's just by raising it up a couple octaves and using a different parameter here. right back where I was when I started. So if you kind of remember your parameters, you can always go back to where you were and just create so many different types of sounds with that. So that's the fun with Basimilis. It is a great instrument for so many effects. You can do a lot of drum kits with it. You can pretty much cover toms, snares, hi-hats, low, bass. You can even have them as bass lines. Like, it just has so many pieces. I've seen so many people have, when they're starting out in Eurorack, they'll have such small cases, but there's always a Basimilis in that case because it has so many possibilities for any kind of sound designer or any kind of project that you're working on. So we really love the BIA, as we call it here. Great, so let's also talk about the Vert Interlegio, which is our stereo oscillator, and play a little bit of it just to recall what it sounded like from the original patch. So you can hear some of the stereo. If you listen to this in headphones, you can hear the stereo that goes back and forth. There's also 3 different modes here. There's harm, saw X, and bass mode. So you can really take this a lot of different places as well. There's also a chorus, and everything is also CV controlled. So one other nice thing about the Vert Interlegio is there is these phase modulation inputs. So if you just want to take another oscillator and put it into the phase modulation inputs and just make it sound completely different and totally aggressive, we'll do that as well. So let me just run through that for you here real quick. So now I'll add some, let's take the BIA we just talked about and add it to the Vert Interlegio's phase modulation just to make it sound obnoxious, because that's what it's there for. It's not used to Basimilis, it's used. So that's Vert Interlegio stereo oscillator on the Legio platform. And since we're next to the Vert Interlegio, I'll show a little bit about Libre Legio, which is the processing and the dynamics processor that you can have in Eurorack, which we're really proud of. We have the Polydactyl Versio, so it's a larger format that does multi-band passing that you can use for specific instruments, designed mostly for that. And then Libre Legio is your overall glue for your modular. So a lot of modular performers will record their sets, go into their digital audio workstation and do some mastering or send it elsewhere. So here you can actually do a lot of the compression and a lot of that gluing just within your Eurorack system. So I'm going to play the whole mix again with and without Libre so you can hear how much of a change that makes in just putting everything together. Okay, so I'm going to just turn off all of the dynamics processing now, and then I'm going to build it up. So it's going to be a lot quieter. Okay, so that's our dynamics processing. And we also have the Lapsus Os, which is a 4-channel attenuverter. So what I like to call this module is a remote control, because you're able to control several things in your Eurorack at once without moving your hands that much. Because what if you want to have 4 or 5 different places to turn and you only have 2 hands and you need some sort of remote? That's kind of what I call it. So I'll give you just a short example of how we can use that with the Bacillus. So the Bacillus can come in and be a very short poppy sound, but then if I turn the knob on the Bacillus, you get the decay, which makes it a lot fatter and wider. But if you don't want to sit here and turn the knob over here, and you can slide it with this module, then it actually does the trick. And because there's 2 outputs with the Lapsus Os, you can actually use the same slider to affect different parts of your case. So you're going to hear it first with the Bacillus opening up that decay, and then I'll patch in something else into the second. We'll see how it sounds, and then you can see that I'm affecting 2 different modules at the same time just with one slider. I'm going to throw the other channel into the filter, so we'll actually adjust the filter and the Bacillus drum just by using one slider at the same time. So that's just one channel with Lapsus Os. There's 3 other sliders, and you can also have the offsets and other attenuation that can interrupt that signal as well, just to give you a lot of functionality. I actually put a song together. I had 1 row and had all these modules, and all I did was just turn these for just an amazing 3-minute jam just by adjusting these. So if you're not sure which knobs to turn, and you get nervous when you're performing and you're just like, I don't think that's the right one, or I'm nervous in turning any knobs, then you can use this as your guide, and then once it's patched in through the inputs, makes it really easy to do improvisational and any kind of performances with Eurorack. And the last module I'll go deep with in this case is the Mimetic Digitalis 16-step sequencer. It has 4 CV outs, so you can do control voltage or pitch. So you can create what I like to do is create melodies with 1 channel and use the other 3 channels just to change some of the CV parameters for the inputs versus the other modules, which is kind of what we're doing in this case. So let me show you about how easy it is to play. What I love about Mimetic Digitalis is that you can play it on the fly, and if you don't like it, you can reset it, you can undo it, you can load patterns, you can save patterns, you can press one button and it does a lot of different CV controls. You can zero everything out, which we'll go through some of that. So I'm just going to program. I'll stop the clock, I'll empty it out, and then I'll create my own pattern. So you can kind of see what I do just by using this encoder here, and then I can adjust the settings for the specific output, since there's 4, the specific output that I want to actually modify. So in this case, I did unplug one of these earlier, so I'm going to put that back here. Okay, so let's hear the Mimetic Digitalis with the filter again, just because that's how I have it patched initially. And then I'm going to just make some patterns on the fly, stop them, start them over, recall, so that you don't lose any savings or lose any settings. So this is actually the input. I'm going to take it out, and then when I put this in, you're hearing the sequencing going through the Mimetic Digitalis. So after all that playability and fun, you're like, I just kind of wanted what I had before that. You can easily save the pattern. And since I had saved the previous pattern, I will now load the pattern into the first bank, which is up to 16 you can choose from. Now when I play this again, the old pattern will now resume. Okay, so I've gone through most of the fun parts of the case, and I think I'm just going to play this out a little bit. So this has been a quick look at our noise engineering modules. If you have any questions, please contact your Sweetwater sales engineer, and they'll be glad to walk you through whatever you need, whether you're sound designing, performing, starting with your first case, and just need some ideas. Sweetwater will definitely help you. Thanks for watching.